Oh. Hello guys, Eric here. I know I might just spoil the whole plot of the new 3 Nights at Blue's House 4 for you guys, but just pretend you didn't hear it. So in the beginning of the movie, Steve has been left all alone in their apartment for 3 whole nights, while his friends are at the studio building filming Dawson's own show for children, Rose's Clues. They started the beginning of his show and left off with Dawson and Rose at the snack table. Then Gibby and the others took a long break and sorted out the extras that they don't need. Suddenly, Becky turns around to find a mysterious rainbow puppy just standing right in front of her. She thought that Becky and the others are trying to take over her studio, which they find hard to believe. Then Rainbow Puppy left to go back to her act, while Becky backed away from the hall acting like she didn't experience what she just witnessed. Gibby and Jose heard all of that, and they decided to team up and solve the mystery of the Rainbow Puppy's devilish plan by finding clues. Meanwhile, Steve is working on a few props for his show, Steve's Playroom, writing their first script, and designing their home inside. It took him hours to get all of those things done. Suddenly it starts to get late and Steve went to bed. That night, Gibby and Jose went down to the basement to search for their first clue, which happens to be a needle with a strange rainbow DNA fluent. Then they heard the Rainbow Puppy coming from upstairs and the 2 detectives booked it. Meanwhile, the next morning, Steve woke up from a horrible nightmare and went to the living room to find some reasons. Suddenly he hears Jack Paul's voice coming from the sky or something, and he told Steve about the situation before they first saw Blue, and about Magenta's return, and he has to be prepared. Meanwhile in the studio, Dawson and the others continued to where they left off, and started to do the mail time song. In one of the takes, the Rainbow Puppy snuck out from behind the thinking chair and just flawlessly beat Rose up. This scene is like in Rose's Clues Mail Time Bloopers Episode 7. Meanwhile in the apartment, Steve is still trying to get himself prepared for what's about to happen, when he heard a knock on the door. Greg the Blue Monster came in, and Steve told him about the whole thing that happened earlier. Greg feels a little bit suspicious, but Steve doesn't blame him. The night after, Gibby and Jose went to the top floor to find the next clue, which happens to be an experimental VHS tape. Gibby wondered if it could have something to do with the rainbow DNA. Then Jose and Gibby went downstairs to find the Rainbow Puppy. Back in the studio, George encountered a purple and green koala bear. The koala told George about the rainbow DNA incident, and has got a needle to prove it and tried to extract it on him. But George ran away to warn the others, and they took no notice about it. Meanwhile, Steve heard a strange noise coming from the living room, and that's when he sees the cat known as Periwinkle. Periwinkle told Steve that he heard what Jack Paul said yesterday, and what else he said was very scary. Periwinkle ensures Steve to be careful when trying to fight her. After what he heard, Periwinkle whooshed out of the apartment. So Steve just went back to bed. Meanwhile, Rainbow Puppy and her koala friend are still going on with their plan. Then she gets a call from Magenta saying she's on her way to her destination. Then they start to continue on with what they've started, that is until Jose and Gibby found them and took them to an interrogation room so they can answer some questions. Meanwhile the next morning, Steve and Greg are working on the theme song for the Steve's Playroom show, when they heard a knock on the door. Nigel came in and Steve told him about everything that happened yesterday. So they have one final night to get themselves fully prepared. Meanwhile in the studio, Dawson and Gibby continued doing the mail time song, until Gibby gets a call from Jose telling him to meet him at the 2nd floor. Gibby told the others he'll be back. So Gibby and Jose went to find the last clue, which happens to be a picture of the Rainbow Puppy and Periwinkle. They both found out that the Rainbow Puppy and Periwinkle have been separated from each other for 3 years, and that's why she's stolen the DNA to create her own friends. Suddenly they heard the door open and they tried to get out. Then Gibby gave the 3 clues to Josh and told him if he sees a picture location he'll have to jump through. So Josh went to look for a picture location. First he showed George the clues that Gibby and Jose found, and they went to a room where a television was standing. Josh put the VHS tape in the VCR, and they watched the experimental project. Josh and George are so frightened by this, that they have to get out of there, but Rainbow Puppy blocked their way and tried to use the DNA on them, but Joe finally stopped her and saved the two victims. So they saw a picture location and they all jumped through. Meanwhile, the next evening, Gibby and the others told Dawson and Rose that the Rainbow Puppy is here in the studio trying to hunt them down. So Dawson suggests that everyone should attempt to escape the building and try to hide from the Rainbow Puppy as quick as possible. Meanwhile, Josh, George, and Joe go in separate rooms and search for anything strange. Josh found a pink paw print on the floor, then he looked up and saw magenta, and they ran upstairs and told Joe. Just then they heard a thump from the air vent, and Rainbow Puppy broke through the roof, and the three of them hid somewhere safe from her. But then Josh showed Rainbow Puppy the picture of her and Periwinkle. Rainbow Puppy told Josh about her and Periwinkle's life together, and that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Then she told them that she's very sorry for what she had done. Then they all teamed up and went back to their apartment, but then Magenta grabbed her by the mouth and swept her away. Meanwhile, in midnight, Steve and the others are finally prepared for what gets in their way. Then they saw Rainbow Puppy laying suffocated on the kitchen floor. Then there was Magenta. She told Steve, 1 minute, he is the most special person, then next minute, he is a nobody. Then Periwinkle showed up and tried to take her down, but then Magenta beat him to the ground. Then Jack Paul said to Steve that he tried going down the path he took, and told him to kick Magenta's butt. So Steve went for the attack, and then Magenta was down for the count. Then Steve suddenly shot her, and they went back to the bedroom to check on Rainbow Puppy. Then she woke up, and saw Periwinkle standing right in front of her, and told him she's sorry for her biggest mistake. Periwinkle tried to comfort her by saying he's glad that she went back to him. Then Steve, Greg, and Nigel went to take the two back home, but then the koala appeared from nowhere. But then Joe knocked him out from behind and saved them, and so they took Periwinkle and Rainbow Puppy back to their home. Later the next morning, Steve and all his friends teamed up to work on what their first episode of Steve's Playroom should be, and they all lived happily ever after. So Dawson found Periwinkle in Walmart, but if you guys know where to find Rainbow Puppy, please let us know. So that's pretty much everything cleared up. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. See you later. Is that all of it? I did what you said. You can let me go now, right? Wait, what are you doing? No. Stay away from me. No. No. I